Okay. Hello. All set? Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon to everybody. We're very happy to have this event. My name is Eric Chavez. I come in from Oikos Association, who is an organization member of the Mountain Partnership. I have some, it's okay. Who is an organization member of the Mountain Partnership. I want to start the event thank you very much the organizers of the Cryosphere Pavilion. It's normal that uh, I gonna thank very much the people from the organizers of this pavilion. I think it's a great opportunity to have this conversation, this discussion today, even in the context that this is the 2022 has been appointed as the International Year of Mountains, and the Mountain Partnership is the agency who is implementing the year. Yes, I want to say also that this year is as I say, the International Year of Mountain Development, and our main message of this year is Women Move Mountains. The Mountain Partnership is a partnership of different governments, organizations, and from all over the world who work together promoting the mountain sustainability in different aspects. So I want to present. Is that okay? Turn off this. It's okay. Okay. So I want to start introducing our panel. We have a great panel today, and I introduce to Stefan Uhlenbruck, who is the Director of Hydrology, Water, and Cryosphere from the World Meteorological Organization, Juan Chang, who is the Head of Technical Operation of Perman Global, Adriana Vidal, Senior Policy Officer for International Union for Conservation of Nature, and Anil Mishra, who is the Chief of Hydrological Systems, Climate Change from UNESCO. So we have also Ono Rule, who is the Director of Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, who is joining this event on virtual basis, on virtual way. Ono, we cannot see you. Can we see Ono around? Yes? Okay. Okay. Here you are, Ono. Very welcome, Ono. Nice to see you. So I want to start this conversation speaking about that innovation in mountain areas is not something that is not very well associated. No, even if mountain population are intrinsically resilient and have to be very innovative to survive in mountain areas, dealing with major changes, uh, using innovation for the diversification of products, using the verticality for exchange products to different altitudinal areas, being very multicultural. They are not recognized for their innovation skills. So the idea of this event is, of course, to show how mountains can be innovative, the importance of the innovation in these regions, and also how it's possible to promote more innovation, so what we call the entrepreneurial and innovative ecosystems, how different people we can collaborate together to promote innovation, to promote also improvement of the livelihood of mountain areas. Who we know mountain areas there is a are very complex areas. There is a remoteness. There is a difficult access to mountain areas. There are lacks of services, lacks of investment, but at the same time, they have some specificities, their particularities that make them rich. So, how to deal with this management at this micro territorial level? and how can we find some specific solution for specific problems that are very specific areas, like I say, mountain areas. I don't hear very well. Okay, so I'm gonna start this conversation giving the floor to Stefan to give some words about how can we foster innovation in mountain territories from the science basic perspective. Okay, the floor is yours. Super
You want me to stand up, yeah?
Yes.
Thank you, Eric. Good afternoon, everyone. The question was about innovation. So many microphones. The question is about innovations. If I may, can I say a few words what I see as a main challenge where actually a lot of innovations are needed? And I'm the first to admit that this is a biased challenge which I present, but I'm working for WMO, as it was said, and one of the biggest challenges we face is data. You know, just have hydrological and meteorological data to be able to close a water balance in mountainous areas is a big challenge. Mountains are particularly difficult because at the one hand they are the water towers of the world. I'm very you're all very aware of that discussion. On the other hand, the observation network is often very sparse, you know, and then you maybe have some stations there, but they are not at the right location. They are often in the valleys where the people live. It's very costly to entertain hydrological measurements of basic parameters in higher up in the mountains. You know, it's difficult to get there, difficult to maintain during winter seasons, etc. So it's really very costly. So therefore, the stations we have and where we do our geospatial analysis to produce some basin rainfall, for instance, it's often biased to stations that are actually at the wrong place, you know, even if we have some. So that is one of the biggest challenge. So if we don't even have good data, how can we make reliable estimates of space-time variability of hydrometeorological parameters? Therefore, innovations are needed. And Eric, if I may, I think you spoke about technical innovations. These could be new sensors, new instruments, new ways to observe systems. I'm still with my monitoring problem here. On the other hand, you also spoke about social innovations, so innovations in finance, innovations in governance, innovations to get processes better organized to improve the observations, improve the monitoring. And I fully agree with you, and both are needed. And if I may, when I read through the kind of preparatory material and thought about it, you know, what we often forget is the innovation. It's happening elsewhere. But you talked about quite a number of stakeholders are needed to promote innovation. And what is often, maybe there's a technical innovation or a kind of a social innovation, but there's a lack of innovation to actually operationalize it. So it's nice to have a new sensor. It's nice to have a new finance system, but to really operationalize that into our services, operationalize that into our national hydrological and meteorological services is still a way. So the kind of innovation to operationalize things. I'm not sure if that is part of social innovation for you, but that's one aspect that I believe needs more attention. Thank you. I think we're doing several rounds of questions, so I keep my gunpowder dry for now.
Thank you very much. Yes, a very good point. The social innovations, no, and how to operationalize this, the different innovations where we know we need different actors at the same time working together. And this is one example. This place is an example from different actors from different backgrounds speaking together about innovation. How can we bring them together to these areas? And so taking this time, I'm gonna pass the word to Juan and ask you to speak about the different possibilities of innovation in the economical part, how to include the mountain areas into the economical. Oh. Sí, mejor. Vete.
Okay, hello.
Okay, so how to include? We know that even in a climate change context, they give us offer many opportunities that and many we know there are financial mechanisms, financial instruments that have been used in other ecosystems, not in mountain areas. How can these types of different opportunities can be also adapted or developed in mountain areas. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. And thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this event. It's very relevant, actually. I work in a private sector company that works in investing in tropical forest conservation mostly to generate carbon offsets that are sold to the carbon markets. But this has not been the case for mountain ecosystem. This is a very well developed market in which there is data and information that allows developing a unit that is a carbon offset that can be traded in the market. However, for mountain ecosystems where there are no forests, high altitude peatlands and other pastures, that has not happened yet. And that's quite unfortunate. Now we are seeing a very different moment for the carbon markets where there is more demand than supply. And this can be an opportunity to mobilize additional finance for restoring and protecting carbon-rich mountain ecosystems. I'm gonna briefly just mention 3 areas of innovation on how this could happen. One is the governance innovation. Currently, in the international negotiations, there are always different views from the national level to the local level to the community level on how to get involved in carbon markets transactions. Here's where we need to find ways where local communities can get engaged into these ongoing and growing carbon markets that could bring finance, new finance to protect and restore ecosystems, but in a way that allows them to be to participate freely, but also in a very dynamic way. The process that we've seen so far from the experience in tropical forest ecosystem, that of course you need to go through the national legislation, but how to integrate that the local knowledge and participation into these transactions, that's one. A second innovation is on the carbon measurement. The knowledge is quite well developed on how to measure and account for carbon in forests. I'm only talking on natural ecosystems, of course. In other sectors, there is also well advanced knowledge, but talking about natural ecosystems, the knowledge on measuring and accounting for carbon in tropical forests is well developed, and that allows the carbon market, but has not happened in mountain ecosystems that are non-forests. And there we need more knowledge and data. And I believe that the current technologies allow that to happen. There are high resolution sensors that can give us, with high level of accuracy, estimates on how much carbon can be restored and protected in these carbon-rich ecosystems that can be used to be part of the carbon markets. The final point that I think is across natural environments is financial innovation. For many years, the conservation and restoration of ecosystems has been reliant on international cooperation. But in order to make this a transformational change, the paradigm shift that is being pursued as part of this discussion is how do we innovate on the financial mechanisms that is not only carbon finance but also domestic and public finance as well. I think probably other speakers will talk about more how these public finance and new structures help, but I think that's still something that needs to be more concrete, more mature in this environment. Usually the environmental world has been a separate world from the financial world, but today we need to bring these two worlds together.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Juan. Now we are finding some potential collaborations, but the complementarity. We know that we need some information for promote and foster innovation, especially if we want to develop carbon markets. That is one of the points that we are discussing now also. And I want to pass the floor to Adriana Vidal and asking about how can we also put together the governance of Andean regions that we know, particular Andean regions with their particularities, with their specificities, together with policies. Many times the policies are coming from a top-down approach, and they're very different, very difficult to implement them, especially in mountain regions and rural areas where they perceive that the government in different ways and stuff like that. Okay, please, Adrian.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for the invitation. At IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature, we work extensively with communities across the board to achieve this multi benefit approach where you you will see improvement on livelihoods, on ecosystems, and overall on policy and governance arrangements. Particularly in mountain ecosystems, we have worked very closely with communities across the world into increase their resilience and reduce their vulnerability to climate change. I think, as a reminder, it's important to keep in mind that mountains are highly vulnerable to climate change, disasters, and changes in temperature. And so that is on the ecosystem side, and on the community side, uh, people who live in mountain ecosystems are usually the poorest of the poor. So you mix vulnerability, disaster, and climate-related events, and the difficulties that communities, poor communities, have to face these challenges, then you definitely have a problem. So with regards to responses and innovations, we have seen many times that in order to adapt to climate change and to develop this approach or implement this approach that is called ecosystem-based adaptation, you need to work responding to a number of things. Of course, answers and responses are designed to reduce vulnerability and to reinforce resilience from communities. But you have to do it in a way that responds to communities' interests. So it's not that you go on the field and decide what is best for the ecosystem, but it is actually, it goes hand in hand, both community and mountains. And this is very much connected to the question of governance and policies. There are many, an absolute fundamental condition to the success of this of ecosystem-based adaptation in mountains is to build networks, so that to use the social networks that exist there, to build buy-in, to build awareness and engagement with these measures that are going to be implemented on the ground. That definitely result into short-term economic benefits, because communities are not going to be engaged if they don't see the benefit soon enough or quickly. And then, of course, keeping the big picture in front of everybody, which is that in the long term, this will help them to build resilience and therefore implementing activities that will improve the ecosystem where they live. And I can elaborate more later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you for some examples later on about this very interesting things. I'm going to take some very interesting words that working with the interest of the communities and multi-benefit approach, of course. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass the word now to Anil. I understand that we have a PowerPoint presentation for Anil. You want to speak? You prefer to speak here? Come on.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for this opportunity to say a few words about UNESCO's perspective on mountain sustainability through innovation. Of course, UNESCO stands for Education, Science and Cultural Organization, so that we look at innovation also from scientific perspective, the only science mandated UN agency with the cultural aspect, indigenous knowledge, and so on and so forth. Can you go to next slide, please? So why we are talking about mountain sustainability today? I think this is to key milestone that really we need to consider. One is International Year of Sustainable Mountain Development, which is at the initiation of Kyrgyz Republic at the United Nations. And the second, 2025, as the International Year of Glacier Preservation, also a neighboring country, Tajikistan is taking it to the UNGA with all other UN agencies. So these are two milestones that will set not only just the celebration, but milestone. What does that mean? What are the monitoring system we need, as Stefan said? What are the ecosystem services? Can you go to next slides, please? Yeah, okay. Yes. Okay, so let me go. Yes. Mountain provides most of the ecosystem services to the downstream countries. It's from the resource perspective, but also from the cultural aesthetic perspective. And UNESCO did one studies, and we call mountain also living laboratories. A mountain biosphere reserve, World Heritage Site. Out of the 738 biosphere reserves, there are 474 mountain biosphere reserve where we are testing citizen science validation. Now we have the technology with the low-cost 3D sensors, 3D printers, run-of measurement instruments. So we can really engage citizens into the innovation. And the need for monitoring is not what we are calling it today. Even in 60s, UNESCO called for continuous monitoring of snow and glacier masses in 1960s, before even intergovernmental hydrological program was established. So we really support what Stefan said. We have to have a monitoring. We have to understand how these melting glacier will have impact up in the mountain, but also in the downstream for each of the river basin. And that's where UNESCO and recently with IUCN, we published this report. In the climate change, we are talking about 1.5 degree. If we don't meet 1.5 degree, 2/3 of the mountain related, glacier related heritage sites will be gone. So we really need to think about innovation to understand where we stand in terms of climate change impact. We did one study also in the Andes, the climate change impact on glacier melt, but also water availability in the downstream countries. And the new phase of IHP, which we call Science for a Water Secure World, we're really calling for citizen science with the open science, so that nobody is left behind and everybody has access to not only data methodology, but also the interpretation of it. And with that, I would like to also highlight here two of the projects that we launched, particularly in Central Asia, which really engaging community and local stakeholders to develop forecasting for the glacier lake outburst floods in Central Asian countries, but also water source availability were also in the downstream countries. So from the science perspective, also innovation, we need to take it from here. And with that, I will be happy to answer further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anil. So now it's time to pass the floor to Ono. Ono, are you around? Let's wait some seconds about. So we know that even all of this framework that we are discussing, when we put also into a climate change context, the situation is even more complicated, no? And that's the need to, the importance of the need, the urgent need to find the new ideas, new ways to overcome the difficulties, and thinking about how to change the constraints into innovation engines. So I want to pass the floor to Ono, who is the director of Aga Khan agency from for Habitat. And Ono, so I want to ask you how to change these constraints into innovation engines. No, you are coming from you are as a practitioner, and how would you use the opportunities of technology, of sciences, and the different types of points of the discussion that we are having here. Please, Ono, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Enrique.
Yes, yes, we can hear you very clear.
I first of all want to thank the Mountain Partnership and the Cryosphere Pavilion for having me. And of course, I'm part of the Mountain Partnership, so it's in the family in that sense. And apologize for the fact that I'm not in Sharm el-Sheikh this week. Nobody can afford to be in Sharm el-Sheikh for 2 weeks, I think. And so next week I'll be there for another event at the Cryosphere Pavilion. I'm very happy to join today. And I think the question is really important, and Stephen, Juan Adriana, and Anil have made some important points. We are practitioners, and we come from the background of working in the Karakoram, Pamir, and Hindu Kush area, trying to help communities be resilient to natural disaster. And obviously that work over 25 years evolved into climate change adaptation, because the problems got worse and worse, the challenges got worse and worse. We progressed, but of course, the rapidly progressing climate change in those areas progressed faster than our ability. So innovation is exactly what we're looking for. And I want to very much support Stefan's point about the need for social innovation. But what I mean by that is actually that, and it's great, I think, that we're doing this in the International Year of the Mountains. The social innovation we need is that we all stop thinking of mountains as marginal or remote. I've heard policy discussions in countries who have very, very important mountainous areas. The policy discussions, of course, took place in the capitals in the plains. And in those discussions, the official of the country would commonly refer to those people in the mountains. And so the first social innovation I want is that we understand that somebody who's born in a mountain, lives there and tries to make a life there, is just like somebody who's born in a big city, on an island or at the coast, and I'm mentioning islands and coast for a reason. And we need to understand that they're not marginal, they're not remote, and it's also not a good thing to think that they might just move out of there because mountains are so hard. Because if they move out of there, the question is where they're going to move. So that's the first thing. The second thing is technological innovation, because what we discovered when we thought the risks are getting worse, what are we now going to do to help these people not just actually survive, but actually do better? Because our aim is not to help people survive, but actually to improve their quality of life, despite the fact that climate change is running faster than sometimes we can run. Now, the first thing you need to do, and it's a similar philosophical change, is to understand that if you, for instance, think of an avalanche in Tajikistan, you should think of it as an avalanche in Switzerland. In Switzerland, that's where I live. In Switzerland, mostly, we have a very sophisticated avalanche prevention system. And mostly what it does is it prevents skiers from triggering avalanches themselves that kill them while they're having fun on the mountains. The people in Tajikistan, just as an example, in Gorno-Barakshan, many of them live in villages where they're not only coming the mountains, or they might do, but they just live there and they can't really live anywhere else. So we should approach the things with the same ambition. It's very difficult because, of course, it's very expensive. And therefore, Stefan had an excellent example. He says we got weather monitoring, too few weather monitoring posts, but we don't have them in the right place also. We actually have 88 weather monitoring posts throughout these three countries, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, in the high mountains. And we have a 10-year time series, a very valuable series. But it is true that they're in the valley. So what we've done is actually worked with Harvard University and their AI team and our local engineers who know how to make things cheaply to now start putting automated weather monitoring systems up on the mountains where the origin of the avalanche is. That, Stefan, after a few years will give you a valuable time series. But the problem is, for now, these stations are there in North America and in Europe, but they were too expensive and difficult to maintain for our geography. So what our innovation is to introduce a concept, but to try and make it cheaper, more sustainable. The last thing I want to mention is this whole issue of how do you deal with accelerating risks of natural disaster, building on Ariana's depiction of what happens to people in the mountains. So difficult to be resilient and to remain resilient. Well, in the past, we thought what we would do is we would just map the risky areas. Mostly there's a rock slide every 20, 30, 40, 50 years on a slope, so it's enough to map it, train people to know that it's a dangerous area and have a warning system for this rather remote risk that something happens and then a response system for when it actually happens. Now, and this is not just for rock slides, it can be a glacial lake outburst. That's actually a good example. If you talk about the Shishka Glacier in Pakistan, when we first assessed it 15 years ago, the assessment team remarked that there had been an outburst 50 years before, 50 years before. And they said we should still take that into account. That same glacier has had 3 outbursts in the last 5 years. I'm not saying that's a statistically relevant observation, but it just shows what can actually happen. So how do you deal with that? You have to be more ambitious. You don't just map the risk and say, okay, we have a response mechanism. No, when you map the risk, you got to then think, just like you think when you're planning Mumbai or in Karachi or in New York, where land is, by the way, also scarce, just like in the mountains. I'm talking about land that is suitable for construction and for living. And you actually plan remote communities to move themselves and their main assets out of the way of where there is too much risk. Sounds too ambitious? Well, yes and no. But we worked with Harvard in Ishkashim in Afghanistan, all remote during COVID, to be planning of that community. This was with the government of Afghanistan is now no longer the government of Afghanistan. Despite that, the current authorities in Afghanistan are still interested in pursuing that plan. We worked in Rashid, down of Lake Cyrus, a very famous outburst lake potential in Tajikistan, to plan a community moving up to an area that the community themselves know is safe, and do what we call extreme urban planning in very remote areas. So what we try to do is bring concepts that are made for rich countries or for highly populated cities to remote areas so that these remote areas can benefit from these technologies. In order to do that, got to be very inventive and not forget that it only works if you keep engaging with the communities, which is of course how we started and keep working.
Thanks.
Let me leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ono. Thanks. So it's a good example of how social innovation or different ways of collaboration, how we apply the sciences, how do we use the information, the data available for other reasons. I mean, in this case, for the risk management. And also the importance that is, when we speak about innovation, it's not about just technological innovation. I'm very happy that we are discussing about social innovation, innovative models of organization, of governance and policy. So now I want to pass the floor to the public. If someone wants to ask any question, the floor is open. Is there any question to our panelists? Mirala, please.
Thank you. No, I'm just curious because Mr. I don't know his name from UNESCO just told us that he was going to talk about the community, the project with the community, and we haven't heard that much yet. But congratulations to all the panelists, and this is one thing that I'm thinking about now.
Perfect. Anil, do you want to move?
What I mentioned that UNESCO, of course, works on the improvement of science, but also learning with the community. So community knowledge. We did one studies in the Bolivian Altiplano, learning how mountain community is really providing monitoring services using their traditional technology. Now, we call it citizen science, engaging citizens into the validation process. Not just you downscale the data and provide your prediction, but really whether the community's information, their traditional methodology, can also provide feedback mechanism into the validation process. So that's what we call citizen science, engaging community. I didn't know whether I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. If you can tell us a bit more, what is this citizen science about? And of course, all the other participants, panelists, if they have experience, would be good to hear about that.
Yeah, I would like to just quickly respond to you. We developed one methodology which is called climate risk informed decision analysis, CRIDA, which we developed together with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. This approach itself, it starts with the shared vision application, not really coming with the hydrological prescribed modeling, but understanding what community needs. So it really incorporates the feedback, their demand-driven methodologies, where we again include this into the citizen science process and open science processes. So this has been done in various regions. We have, particularly in Latin America, in the Spanish language, you can find online learning platform in UNESCO where community practiced citizen science information system is available, particularly on climate risk informed decision analysis.
Thank you very much, Anil. I want to pass the floor to Stefan, who wants to reply about
Yeah.
the last comments.
Thank you. No, very interesting discussion, and I would like to add to the thinking about citizen science. I think that the main advantages, as both of you said, it's kind of the community participation, that you involve them in the process, and also in the way of hazard management. It's kind of this end-to-end thinking that you start at the where the hazard is developing with observation, new observation techniques, and then assure the data quality, go to some modeling, goes to some warning or forecasting of a hazard, and then inform the local communities, and then they act or not act. No, but that needs a real end-to-end system. So just with remote sensing observations or with operational automated weather station, so that's usually not so. It has its limits, put it like this. No, so therefore involving the citizens from the beginning is a very good one. I think that's true. And there's two aspects to it. One is the data quality. The citizens as observer are not necessarily trained or kind of observe the parameters that you need to further calibrate your hydrological model or your drought forecasting system or whatever. It's maybe that somebody walks every day is dog in the morning and takes a picture of a river and looks at the river level. Huh? But this is of course not a cross section as you like to have it. It doesn't have controlled roughness, and all sorts of issues are connected with that data. However, it gives you a water level. So the question is, how in a scientific, useful, credible way do you integrate this type of soft information into quantitative predictions to really make something useful out of that? That needs a lot of quality assurance and a lot of checking and making and innovations, coming back to Eric's point, but it's not so straightforward. And one more point, and I really liked Adriana's contribution about looking at multiple benefits. And I think you made the point, if I understood you right, about the importance of thinking about community's interest and not necessarily think about your own interest or somebody else's interest, but really trying to understand what community needs to really get that buy-in, and then involving citizen in the observing of the process into understanding these benefits. Is it job creation? Is it additional revenues of income through nature-based solutions? Is it carbon sequestration that maybe can create revenues or kind of benefit elsewhere? Is it regulating of floods and droughts to storing more water upstream? Is it a change of water quality to retain water in the landscape, and therefore the water quality changes that come with it? So understanding all of that is the starting point of ecosystem-based management. And there again, citizen science can play a key role, because it's nothing you can only observe with very expensive equipment downstream, but it really needs an involvement at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. think I'm gonna go give the floor to Adriana, who asked me to complement the answer of Stefan, and give us
Yes.
please some example of what the interesting
Absolutely.
things you were saying
Yeah.
before.
So, great conversation here about how to monitor impacts of the effectiveness of these measures. So, with many partners, we have, and under the FIBA network, by the way, the Friends of EBA, we have developed an effectiveness assessment. How do we measure the effectiveness of the activities that we have implemented on the ground to ensure that it is working? So, in very general terms, what it is measured is the economic benefits, because resilience is directly connected to the improvement of livelihoods from people and communities. The environmental benefits. So, as Stefan was mentioning, all of the things that are observed and that are changing in terms of water availability, changes in water retention, the quality of soils, increased presence of trees, and so on. Also, social benefits that go that are measured in other ways beyond income. So, for instance, increased food security, or an income, of course. We developed an evaluation impact of one of our projects that focus on ecosystem-based adaptation in mountains. And one of the testimonies from a community member in Peru, where the Mountain Institute works in, is the woman from the community said, before EBA interventions, the price of the cheese I used to sell was like, I don't know, like $2. And now, after all of this water management, pasture management, and so on, it has doubled. So there you go. That is a very tangible way of measuring changes with these activities. And well, since I have the mic and I don't want to, maybe I want to give an example about finance, but maybe I can come back to it later.
Okay.
Could
Let-
I come in on citizen science next, if it's okay?
Yes.
Then we go to finance.
Please, oh no.
Because it's such an important point. And you know, to talk to the people of the valley and ask them what the risks were, and you get a pattern like this, and the old people in the community know what the risk is, and then you organize your preparedness. And then we got a little bit more ambitious, and we found a few geologists. By the way, we have 1,000 employees in our agency and 40,000 volunteers. Volunteers are all local citizens, and of the 1,000 employees of the agencies, 950 are from the communities themselves. And these are not drivers and assistants. These are geologists and satellite and GIS people and all that. So that's another form of science. But anyway, so then you get a geologist and you have a map. And what we found is that when you have a map and you go to a village, most of the people in the village are not very well versed at reading the map, and therefore it doesn't get you very far in terms of helping people understand where their house is, whether there's risk or what has it, and what to do if the hazard happens. So we partly do that by mobilizing volunteers, but what we ended up doing is taking these maps to the village and have a village meeting and just talk about it and use our volunteers for that. And these volunteers, with their local knowledge, translate what's on the map into a message that the people understand, internalize, and act accordingly. So, and then we added satellite imagery to it, so the map became better. But the satellite imagery still doesn't work if you don't do that talking with the community and using volunteers in the community who can translate the message. The other point I did want to make is that I do believe it's really important to employ geologists who are from the mountains, not exclusively, but why not, right? And really try to build capacity through a program so that citizen science is not just only traditional science, but that you also bring I want to say real science, because obviously wrong, because traditional science is also real. But anyway, non-traditional science, modern science, maybe, into those communities, because you need both to deal with the problem.
Thank you very much, Ono. So we pass the floor to Juan. And we close this round of
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
just to add to this point, which is very relevant, and from the experience working in carbon finance with communities, what usually happens is when these kind of projects engage with communities, the discussion becomes very abstract because you start talking about something that you don't see. You see a carbon, a molecule of CO2, and people sometimes it's difficult to explain, but it's also I think at some point even irrelevant for communities because for them what is important is how to improve their livelihoods. Maybe it's not the most important for them. It's not how climate change, carbon flows, how to do these accounting methodologies, and this is what sometimes mistakenly we try to debate when probably the discussion is more relevant for them is what are their needs and how to get the finance to support those needs. And if carbon finance can help, that's fine. But the most important part is not it's not to put the carbon discussion on top rather than the community needs instead.
That's very clear, very important point to be objective, especially when we're speaking about working with people with different cultural background. Many times we forget these kind of things. We come with different complex concepts and complex ideas that very difficult to translate at different levels. So I'm gonna pass the floor to Mr. Mederbek Kanibek Ululu, who represents the Kyrgyz Republic. As you know, the Kyrgyz Republic has proposed and has been promoted, has been behind the declaration of the International Year of Mountain Development. And in this time, Mr. Mederbek wants to do a statement related to the work and the further work on mountains at different United Nations level. Please.
So, dear participants, is it okay? Is microphone? Yes, dear speakers, dear Ms. Pearson, dear ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of our Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kyrgyz Republic, His Excellency Mr. Janbek Kolubayev, and myself, let me express our gratitude to the government of the Chile and Iceland, as well as the International Climate and Security Initiative for the organizing and inviting us to this event. Today, the severity of the threats posed by the effects of climate change does not need to be proven. The climate change creates new risks for the integrity of the planet's ecosystem, the security of people, and the sustainable development of the countries. In recent years, it has been acutely felt in almost all of the world. Unfortunately, the negative implications of climate change are manifested in Central Asian region in the form of melting ancient glaciers and increase in the number of various natural disasters, such as mud flows, floods, droughts, low water, and reduction of the water resources, which entails a great threat and risk for the socio-economic development and food security of our country and our region. So, therefore, the importance of glaciers becomes significant not only for our country, but also for all countries of Central Asia and the world. This due to the fact that mountain glaciers are climate cooling factors on our planet. In this regard, in order to preserve mountain ecosystem and glaciers, the President of the Kyrgyz Republic, His Excellency Mr. Sadir Japarov, declared 2022 in the Kyrgyz Republic as a year of protection of the mountain ecosystem and climate resilience. So at the international level, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution declaring 2022 as an International Year of Sustainable Mountain Development by our initiative. And the member states of UNESCO, the UNESCO General Conference, supported the resolution expanding monitoring and research of mountain glaciers. Within the framework of the current session of UN General Assembly, Kyrgyzstan plans to sponsor a draft resolution 5 years of the action for the development of the mountain regions in 2023 to 2027. So, ladies and gentlemen, Kyrgyzstan carry out consistent work in accordance with UN 2030 agenda for sustainable development, and also in accordance with Paris Agreement. So also we attach the great importance to the initiatives and projects to monitor glaciers, discuss mutually beneficial mechanisms for the water and energy cooperation, adapt to climate change, manage climate risks, develop the drought monitoring tool, and etc. In this regard, Kyrgyz Republic highly appreciates the efforts of the government of Chile and Iceland in the universal struggle against the climate change and welcomes the initiative to establish a high-level group friends of the cryosphere. In this, a great honor for us and responsibility for us, for the Kyrgyz side, to act as a co-founder of this high-level group. And in conclusion, I would like to note that we are ready to continue to make all efforts to further strengthen an intercontinental level of cooperation in harmonize of our initiative in order to achieve a better future for next generations of our people and countries. So I should inform you that on December 19, we will arrange the roundtable conference regarding the sustainable mountain development. And also we are inviting all partners from the cryosphere to this event. And I hope that I will see you in this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We also want to congratulate the work of the Kyrgyz government together with Iceland, of course, Chile, the government of Andorra, the government's members of the Andean Mountain Initiative, and many countries who are promoting the inclusion of mountain, the inclusion of glaciers in the different agendas of the United Nations at international level. So we really appreciate the work, and of course, we appreciate the work of the ICCI managing work in this, and many of these countries are also member of the Mountain Partnership. That's an example of how we work together with different institutions, different organizations, but also with countries. So I think this combination, of different members, different stakeholders, and working at different levels is one of the ways to foster also political innovation. That is something needed also. We need work, of course, in the field, but we need also work at different levels, at higher levels, at policy levels, of course. So before closing this event, I would like to ask our panelists to give just a very, very short last point, 30 seconds, about what do you think? What next? What next? We have discussed about many things. We have how to integrate, how develop integrated approach for mountains, how to encourage the innovation of mountains in the future, how to foster innovation, create entrepreneurial innovation ecosystems, but how to start. Maybe this is a starting point. We are all together here as I said, with governments, with different practitioners. Maybe that's a starting point. So, Adriana, you want to have the floor? You have
Yeah.
29 seconds now.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there wasn't time to elaborate on this, but I think that a key takeaway message is that governance from the bottom up is absolutely critical to ensure that activities that benefit communities and climate change are are long term. Second, it's not about just governance and bringing people engage them into these common goals, but we have to find the right sources of finance. Um, we have talked about a little bit about private finance, but there are other mechanisms where public-private finance or even public finance alone could determine a real or could trigger long-term implementation of these actions for the benefit of mountain communities, such as microcredits, small village loans that have proven to be successful in many countries, and we will be happy to share about this at another event tomorrow at the Korean Pavilion at 9 a.m. But yes, just to say that there are ways to really trigger long-term commitment from at the community level with these innovative solutions on finance. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Adriana. I would like to. It's amazing what you said. Small village loans. Never hear that about that before. Amazing. Juan, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I spoke a little bit about carbon finance, which is mostly a mitigation strategy, and that's how it's usually perceived. And in the climate finance discussions, you usually have this divide between adaptation finance and mitigation finance. But the fact is that when we talk about natural ecosystems in mountains or lowlands, that divide probably is creates a maybe not a perverse even discussion where money or funding for adaptation is less compared to mitigation. Probably this concept needs to be and doesn't probably needs to be divided as such when we are talking about natural ecosystems, and finance should acknowledge not only the mitigation benefits that are provided, but also the resilience and adaptation benefits that can come from protecting and restoring mountain ecosystems.
Amazing. Mountain has this great capability, ecosystems that store carbon and also provides water, works on adaptation and on mitigation at the same time. So it's something that we can move forward on that. I believe that in the future years, the next years, these kind of models will be developed, and we have to be ready for that. Anil.
I'll just take 5 seconds and then I'll elaborate. So 5 seconds is build capacity for sustainability and solidarity. Then I will elaborate. We are not in a right track of 1.5 degrees. So mitigation, despite the effort, it's not really providing solution. We need to continue to go on adaptation, but that's also not provide the solution, meaning that we need to have innovation and even think about changing different crop pattern. I was talking to the other colleagues today in one of the forum, one of the pavilion. Use a different cropping patterns. So again, use citizen science engagement, learn from the citizens what works, what doesn't work, and move forward. Use innovation and citizen science. Over.
Thanks, Anil. Build capacity. It's a very key, important part of the whole thing. In the Mountain Partnership, we have a couple of programs, Grow Agro Biodiversity Program, for capacity building and e-promote. Both programs bring people from all over the world to get together, to work together, to strengthen our partnership. I want to give the floor to Ono, and then Stefan, you close with the last words. Ono, is that okay for you? Are you here?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So first of all, we can't give up on 1.5 degrees, and we can't give up on mitigation because the problem will just become too difficult. Now, The real issue, of course, is all of us who live in mountains know that adaptation is not something in the future that we need to think about. It's a thing that should have happened 10 years ago. It definitely should happen now, and more should happen. What I want to argue for is that the way to get there is to be ambitious about what we're trying to achieve for the people in the mountains. Because there are two frontiers of climate change. There are the coasts and the mountains. People say the coasts and the ice, but other than for the penguin and the polar bears, human species means the mountains. We need not to accept that people who live right by the ice are doomed or marginal or can't have a good life. We need to be ambitious for them, because if we take the steps to achieve that goal, we will take the steps that help these people adapt and preserve their human habitat. This is important because as the temperature goes up, our habitat can shrink unless we adapt. And the mountains are at the borderline of that. And that's what we're fighting for.
Thank you very much. Oh, no, and this part is also to give a value of the people who are the custodians of these ecosystems, to maintain their cultures, to maintain their traditions, to maintain their different practices, even many times the traditional practice, the ancestral practice for this, and not. And believe also with you, I agree with you. They're not marginal. They have their own many capabilities, and we don't have to trade like that. So, Stefan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they're not marginal, but they are sometimes marginalized. I think that's the problem. I think the challenges around mountainous communities and all that was very clear. I think I don't need to repeat the importance of innovation. So my tweet at the end of the session would be: innovations, either technical or social. We also need to innovate the way we use this innovation, how we operationalize this innovation to make a difference. Thank you.
Okay, before closing this event, I want to thank one more time to the organizers, ICCI. Thank you very much. We're following you since long ago. We know each other since long ago. I know that it has been a long way, a long path to arrive here. Now we have a very nice house and to have this meeting here. And for sure we will keep working more. And I feel that there are many potential and future ways of collaboration. And about innovation and the Mountain Partnership, we have also developed a concept of mountain innovation hubs, where as a co-working space to encourage innovation. And we also are looking to bring together different actors with different knowledge to get this complementarity and to move forward into solutions, finding solutions, thinking out of the box. And in this sense, this panel also is a great example of how to bring together different ideas, different stakeholders, and explore possibilities how to build synergies. I want to thank you very much to all my colleagues in Rome. Thank you very much. This event has been done also with the hard work of many people who is not here, but they work very hard. I want to thank also to all the public and of course to our great panelists. Thank you very much.